In California, property taxes generate over $70 billion every single year, funding schools, police, firefighters, and local services. Now imagine waking up to headlines claiming that system could be destroyed forever. Some homeowners are calling it a financial nuclear bomb. Others say it could completely rewrite the rules of owning property in the most expensive housing market in America. But here's the real question. Is this the beginning of massive tax relief? Or the start of something far more unsettling? Behind the dramatic headlines, there are proposals, legal shifts, and policy changes that could impact how your home is assessed, how much you pay, and even what happens when you pass that home down to your children. For some families, this could mean unexpected tax jumps. For others, it could mean opportunity. So what's really happening? Who wins? Who loses? And should homeowners actually be panicking right now? Stay with me, because the truth is more surprising than the headlines. Homeowners are in shock. Lawmakers are scrambling. And what just happened in California could change property taxes forever. If you own a home or plan to, this is not something you can ignore. The financial impact could be massive, and the ripple effects might hit sooner than anyone expected. This isn't just politics, this is your money, your property, your future. Subscribe right now to stay ahead of the chaos, because the people who understand this first win. Number 1. The stability homeowners counted on. May be shifting for decades, millions of California homeowners have relied on one powerful promise: predictability. Property taxes didn't rise wildly with market prices. Even when home values doubled or tripled, tax bills increased slowly and steadily. That stability allowed families to budget long-term, retirees to stay in their homes, and neighborhoods to remain intact even as property values skyrocketed around them. It created a sense of financial security in a state where almost everything else feels expensive and uncertain. But now, conversations around reform, reassessment rules, and fairness are starting to challenge that long-standing structure. And that's where the anxiety begins. The concern isn't that property taxes will vanish overnight. It's that the rules behind how they're calculated could evolve. If reassessment standards change, or if protections are narrowed, some homeowners could see their tax base adjusted closer to current market value. In simple terms, that means higher annual bills for certain groups. And when home prices in many areas are already in the millions, even a small percentage increase can translate into thousands of dollars per year. For families living on fixed incomes, that possibility feels less like reform and more like financial pressure building quietly in the background. So what should homeowners do right now? First, understand your current assessed value and how long you've owned your property. Review your most recent tax statement and compare it to market estimates. The key isn't panic, it's preparation. Systems don't usually change overnight, but when they do shift, the people who understand the details are the ones who stay in control. The real shockwave isn't sudden destruction. It's uncertainty about what comes next, and whether the stability people counted on will look the same 5 years from now. Number 2, new buyers could be entering a completely different game. If you're thinking about buying a home in California right now, this uncertainty hits differently. While longtime homeowners have benefited from years of stable assessments, new buyers enter at today's market value. That means their property taxes are already calculated based on much higher purchase prices compared to someone who bought 20 or 30 years ago. Now, imagine reforms that further adjust how assessments work. The gap between longtime owners and first-time buyers could either shrink dramatically or widen even more. And that possibility is creating tension in the market. For younger families trying to break into home ownership, this feels like stepping onto a moving platform. Prices are high. Interest rates fluctuate, insurance costs are climbing, and now, questions around future tax structures add another layer of uncertainty. If reassessment rules change in the coming years, buyers today might face unexpected increases later. On the flip side, some reforms could aim to create a fairer structure between generations. But fairness in policy often comes with trade-offs. And someone always pays more. The big question is, will new buyers carry the weight of these changes? So what can you do if you're house hunting? Run multiple tax projections, not just the estimate shown in the listing. Ask your lender how potential assessment changes could affect your monthly payment. Think long-term, not just about today's numbers. Because in a state where homeownership already feels like a financial marathon, entering the market without understanding the tax landscape could turn into an expensive surprise. Knowledge, right now, is leverage. If this breakdown opened your eyes even a little, tell me in the comments. Would you still buy in California if property taxes change tomorrow? We spend hours researching and simplifying these complex topics for you. So if you value content that keeps you ahead of the curve, take 1 second and hit subscribe. It's free, it's one click, and it helps us keep bringing you the truth behind the headlines. Number 3, local governments depend on property taxes more than you think. Here's something most headlines don't emphasize enough. Property taxes are not just numbers on your bill. They are the financial backbone of local communities. In California, billions of dollars collected from homeowners flow directly into public schools, fire departments, police services, road repairs, and emergency response systems. When people hear talk about property taxes being destroyed or dramatically restructured, local officials hear something very different: potential budget gaps. And when budgets shrink, services often follow. That's why even small policy shifts can trigger intense debate at the city and county level. If tax revenues were reduced significantly, governments would have to find money somewhere else. That could mean higher sales taxes, new fees, bonds, or cuts to public services. On the other hand, if reforms increase reassessments and generate more revenue, homeowners may feel squeezed even harder. It becomes a delicate balancing act between taxpayer relief and maintaining essential services. The fear isn't just about paying more or less. It's about what happens to the quality of life in your neighborhood. Will school funding change? Will infrastructure projects be delayed? These are real ripple effects people rarely consider when they see dramatic headlines. So what does this mean for you? Start paying attention to local council meetings, ballot initiatives, and county-level discussions, not just state headlines. Property tax policy often evolves through layered decisions that happen quietly over time. Understanding where your community stands can give you insight into what may come next. Because at the end of the day, property taxes aren't just a personal expense. They're part of a larger ecosystem that keeps your city running. And any major shift could reshape more than just your annual bill. Number 4, commercial property could be the real target behind the scenes. While most homeowners are focused on their own tax bills, there's a bigger conversation happening quietly in the background. And it centers on commercial property. Office buildings, shopping centers, warehouses, and large corporate properties are often assessed differently over long periods of ownership. Some reform proposals argue that these properties haven't been reassessed as frequently as residential homes when ownership structures change. Supporters say updating those rules would create a fairer system. Critics warn it could trigger economic side effects that ripple straight back to everyday consumers. Here's why this matters to you. If commercial properties are reassessed at higher market values, business owners could face significantly higher tax bills. And businesses rarely absorb higher costs quietly. They pass them along through higher rents, increased prices for goods and services, or scaled back hiring. That means your local grocery store, restaurant, or small retail shop could feel the pressure. In theory, targeting commercial real estate might protect homeowners. In practice, the economic web is tightly connected. What impacts business property can eventually impact housing costs and consumer prices. So instead of asking only, "Will my property taxes go up?" a smarter question might be, "How will broader property tax reforms affect the overall economy around me?" Pay attention to discussions about split tax structures and commercial reassessment rules. These debates often sound technical, but their consequences can show up in everyday life. From the price of your morning coffee to the availability of jobs in your area. The real shift may not be a dramatic overnight change for homeowners, but a gradual reshaping of how California distributes its tax burden across residential and commercial sectors. Number 5. Inheritance rules are quietly changing the game for families. For many California families, a home is more than just property. It's a legacy. Parents buy a house decades ago, property values rise over time, and one day that home is passed down to children or grandchildren. In the past, certain rules allowed heirs to keep the original tax assessment, which meant they could continue paying significantly lower property taxes compared to the home's current market value. That protection helped families hold on to generational wealth and maintain long-term stability. But recent changes and ongoing debates around inheritance rules are starting to reshape that reality. Under newer regulations, inherited properties often must be used as a primary residence to maintain tax benefits. If the home becomes a rental or vacation property, it may be reassessed at full market value. And in today's California housing market, that reassessment can mean a dramatic increase in annual property taxes. For families who plan to keep a childhood home as an investment or supplemental income source, this shift can feel like the rug being pulled out from under them. What once seemed like a secure financial handoff now comes with added complexity and potential cost. So what should families do? The key word is planning. If property inheritance is part of your long-term financial strategy, consult an estate planning professional and understand how current tax rules apply to your situation. Don't assume yesterday's protections still exist today. Laws evolve and timing matters. Having open conversations with family members now can prevent financial surprises later. Because when it comes to generational property, the difference between keeping a legacy and losing it often comes down to understanding the fine print before it's too late. Number 6. The housing market could feel the shockwaves. Next, whenever there's uncertainty around taxes, the housing market reacts, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. Buyers hesitate, sellers wait, investors pause. Even rumors of major property tax reform can slow momentum because real estate decisions are built on long-term predictability. If people aren't sure what their tax burden might look like 5 or 10 years from now, they may delay buying altogether. And when demand slows, prices can shift. In a state like California, where the housing market is already sensitive to interest rates and affordability concerns, even small waves of uncertainty can create noticeable ripples. At the same time, some homeowners might rush to sell if they fear future reassessments or rising tax obligations. Now that could temporarily increase inventory in certain areas. On the flip side, if reforms are perceived as beneficial for new buyers, demand could spike in anticipation. Markets are driven as much by emotion as by math. Fear, optimism, and speculation all play powerful roles. The key thing to understand is this: property tax policy doesn't exist in isolation. It connects directly to home values, rental markets, and investor confidence. So if you're planning to buy or sell, zoom out and look at the broader landscape. Watch how policy discussions evolve before making rushed decisions. Real estate rewards patience and preparation, not panic. Understanding how tax changes might influence supply, demand, and pricing trends could give you an advantage while others are reacting emotionally. In times of uncertainty, informed homeowners and buyers are often the ones who come out ahead. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Are you feeling confident, confused, or concerned about where this is heading? Drop a comment and share your perspective because real conversations help everyone learn. We put serious time and research into breaking this down clearly for you, so if you appreciate content that cuts through the noise, take 1 second to hit subscribe. It's just one click, but it makes a huge difference for this channel. Number 7. Legal battles could stretch this out for years. One of the biggest misconceptions right now is that everything is already decided. In reality, major property tax reforms rarely happen overnight. They move through proposals, committee debates, public votes, and sometimes even court challenges. And in California, legal battles over tax policy can stretch for years. That means what sounds like an immediate destruction of property taxes could actually turn into a long, drawn-out process filled with revisions, compromises, and unexpected twists. The uncertainty itself becomes the real source of anxiety. When laws are challenged in court, implementation can be delayed or temporarily blocked. Voters may get involved through ballot initiatives. Advocacy groups on both sides, taxpayer protection organizations, and public funding supporters often pour significant resources into shaping public opinion. This creates waves of headlines that feel dramatic but don't always reflect immediate change. For homeowners, this can feel exhausting. One week, the news suggests massive reform. The next week, experts say nothing is finalized. It becomes difficult to separate real policy shifts from political messaging. So, what's the smart move? Stay informed, but avoid reacting to every headline. Focus on official updates from credible sources rather than social media speculation. Major tax systems, especially ones that have been in place for decades, don't simply vanish without extended legal and political processes. The bigger risk isn't sudden change. It's making rushed financial decisions based on incomplete information. In situations like this, patience can be more powerful than panic. Number 8. Inflation is making every tax conversation feel more intense. Let's be honest, if this debate happened during a calm economic period, it probably wouldn't feel this explosive. But right now, inflation is touching almost every part of daily life. Groceries cost more, insurance premiums are rising, utility bills feel heavier, and in many parts of California, homeowners are already dealing with higher maintenance and repair costs. So when property tax reform enters the conversation, it doesn't land in isolation. It lands on top of existing financial pressure. That's why the reaction feels amplified. Even if proposed changes are moderate, people are calculating them against an already stretched budget. A few $1,000s more per year in property taxes might not have felt catastrophic 5 or 10 years ago. Today, it could be the tipping point for some households. And when home values have climbed significantly, homeowners naturally worry that any reassessment closer to market rates could multiply their tax burden. Inflation changes perception. It turns policy discussions into personal stress tests. This is why context matters. Property taxes may or may not shift dramatically, but the emotional response is tied to the broader economy. If you're evaluating your situation, don't just look at one potential change. Review your full financial picture. Build breathing room into your budget where possible. Consider long-term affordability, not just current payments. Because in an inflation-heavy environment, even small policy adjustments can feel larger than they actually are. Understanding that dynamic helps you respond logically instead of emotionally. Number 9. The psychological panic could do more damage than the policy itself. Here's something most people underestimate. Markets don't just move on facts, they move on fear. The words "destroyed forever" trigger emotion before logic even has a chance to catch up. When homeowners believe something drastic is coming, they may rush to sell, delay buying, refinance impulsively, or make financial decisions they later regret. And if enough people act on that fear at the same time, it can create real market shifts, even if the underlying policy change turns out to be smaller than expected. We've seen this pattern before in housing cycles. Headlines spark anxiety, social media amplifies it. Conversations at work and family dinners magnify worst-case scenarios. Suddenly, what began as a policy proposal turns into a wave of speculation. But here's the reality. Major structural tax systems rarely collapse overnight. They evolve, they get amended, they face opposition, and they go through negotiation. The real risk isn't always the reform itself. It's the emotional reaction to uncertainty. So pause and ask yourself, are you responding to confirmed changes or to dramatic language? Before making any move, verify information through official sources and financial professionals. Create a plan based on facts, not fear, because in uncertain times, emotional decisions can cost far more than any tax adjustment ever would. The homeowners who stay calm, informed, and strategic are usually the ones who navigate transitions successfully, while others are still reacting to headlines. Number 10. This isn't just about taxes. It's about the future of homeownership in California. At its core, this debate goes far beyond numbers on a bill. It's about what homeownership will look like in California over the next 10, 20, even 30 years. Will it remain a place where long-term owners feel protected and secure? Will new buyers face a heavier financial load? Or will reforms attempt to rebalance a system many argue has created deep gaps between generations? These aren't just tax questions. They're questions about fairness, opportunity, and long-term stability in one of the most competitive housing markets in the country. Every major shift in property tax policy sends a message about priorities. Is the goal to increase public funding, create generational equity, protect retirees, encourage mobility in the housing market? Each objective pulls the system in a slightly different direction, and while the headlines scream about destruction, the more realistic outcome is transformation. Systems adapt, laws evolve, but they rarely disappear entirely. The real story isn't whether property taxes will vanish, it's how the rules may gradually reshape who benefits and who feels the pressure. So instead of asking, is everything collapsing? A better question might be, how do I position myself for whatever comes next? Stay informed. Review your long-term plans. Think strategically about buying, selling, or holding property. Because whether this turns out to be minor reform or major restructuring, the homeowners who prepare, not panic, will be the ones best positioned for the future. So, has California truly destroyed property taxes forever? Not exactly. What we're seeing isn't a sudden financial nuclear explosion. It's a period of intense uncertainty, political debate, and potential transformation. And when money, homes, and long-term security are involved, even the possibility of change can feel overwhelming. But history shows us something important. Major tax systems don't disappear overnight. They evolve slowly through negotiations, court rulings, public votes, and economic pressure. What makes this moment feel different is timing. Home prices are high, inflation is squeezing household budgets, insurance costs are rising. So when property tax reform enters the conversation, It feels like one more weight added to an already heavy load. That emotional reaction is completely understandable, but emotion alone shouldn't drive financial decisions. The smartest move right now isn't panic, it's clarity. Understand your current assessment. Follow verified updates. Talk to professionals if needed. And most importantly, think long-term. Because whether these proposals lead to small adjustments or larger structural changes, opportunity always exists alongside uncertainty. Some homeowners may face higher costs, others may benefit from new rules. Markets may slow temporarily, then stabilize. What matters most is how prepared you are to adapt. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. The headlines may be dramatic, but your response doesn't have to be. Stay informed, stay strategic, and remember, in times of change, the people who win are rarely the ones who react first. They're the ones who understand the landscape before making their move.